There's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday. I just finished off the weekend. Well, actually, technically it's Tuesday, so the weekend was over yesterday, but we haven't talked since then. Lovely Christine and I had a fantastic getaway. We went to Billings for a night, then to Red Lodge, Cook City, did the Chief Joseph Highway, and then all the way back to Sheridan. But on the way, we stopped for gas in Basin, and I picked up what I thought was just a local newspaper. I have that habit when I go to different places, just pick up the local paper and see what's in it. This one was called the Republican Rustler in Basin. And, first, what caught my attention was the name. Evidently, I had never picked up a paper in Basin before, but generally speaking, news outlets now don't say Republican Rustler or have Republican or Democrat in the name. But historically, that was a pretty normal thing. Papers were pretty honest about their political inclinations, but not so much anymore. I think that if you were to include the word Democrat or Republican in the name of your newspaper, then you would probably alienate half of your potential customers. There are so many people now that are so entrenched in their own politics that if they see something, one word, that disagrees with their own political philosophy, then they'll just disregard it out of hand and not even pick it up and read it. What I found was a small town newspaper that still does news. And what I mean by that is it's just the facts that, something happened. Here were the participants. Here's what they said. Here's what came out of it. And then at the end, not draw any political conclusions from it, which that's very different than what we see in pretty much every other form of media, that it's opinion, thinly veiled with a couple of facts to try to convince you that it's news. Now, the paper did have an opinion section, though it wasn't very big. I don't even think there was a letter to the editor in it. But the reason I bring this up is that was Saturday's podcast. And I have to tell you, or Monday's podcast, rather, hats off to them. I mean, it was a breath of fresh air, even though it only took me a grand total of 15 minutes to read it. But if you haven't listened to the podcast from yesterday, you need to go back and check it out because I go through the articles and explain the difference between the two. So make sure you go check that out. On today's program, another reason why you just shouldn't get arrested over the weekend. Now, I mean, that's advice that we all got in college. Hey, boys, don't get arrested on a Friday. You'll be in jail till Monday morning. Or if you're unfortunate enough to get arrested on a 4-day weekend or even a 3-day weekend, you're going to be in the slammer until the judge gets there. I don't know. Agent 29, did you ever have that experience?
I just got Tom T. Hall's weekend
okay.
in a county jail going through my head.
Well, it actually happened for the Cody mayor from the Cowpie. In an article entitled Cody Mayor Arrested on Suspicion of DUI, Spends Weekend in Jail. And, by the way, I don't think that anybody ever really has a good jail photo, but this one definitely is not it. That is the mayor of Cody, Wyoming, in her mugshot from the Cowboy. An article entitled, I already read you that. The mayor of Cody, Wyoming, spent the weekend in the Park County Detention Center. Lee Ann Ryder was arrested early Saturday morning on suspicion of driving under the influence of alcohol and pleaded not guilty to the charge on Monday. The mayor of Cody, now maybe they took the mugshot Monday or early Monday morning, or maybe even Sunday. Do you suppose that's what happened?
Well, I don't know exactly when that happened, but I know that her next move should be to run for county commissioner.
It should be. She would definitely get elected in Johnson County and perhaps stand a chance in Sheridan County. I wonder if I have the riding around in my automobile. Hold on. Let me look here. I do not. Dang, I'll look for it.
That's okay. You kind of lost the edge there.
I kind of did, right? Okay. So anyway, Leanne Ryder, she's 65, made her first court appearance in Park County Circuit Court Monday afternoon, after about 8 hours after her release from jail at 5:23 in the morning. Ryder was stopped on the 700 block of Sheridan Avenue. How ironic! And by the Park County Sheriff's Office deputy in an unspecified traffic violation at 2:07 a.m. Details about the stop weren't available prior to Ryder's court appearance, he said, but field sobriety tests were performed and her blood alcohol content measured above the legal limit of 0.08. State law says that people can't be held for longer than 48 hours without seeing a judge after their arrest. What? Now, wait a minute. What happens if you get popped on a 3-day weekend? That's going to be more than 48 hours.
Just bring a photograph of the judge in there and say, here's what the judge looks like.
Well, anyway, she made her first court appearance and she pleaded not guilty. And I don't know. I mean, after a mugshot like that, I don't know how you could plead not guilty. But it brings up a question I have for you, Agent 29. As you are an elected official and pal around with a lot of them, there has been a spat of county commissioners and other elected types getting arrested for DUI the last couple of years. The most famous one, of course, was Wrong Way Bill Novotny, who drove blackout drunk between Sheridan and Buffalo, evading police with an open container, and he blew, I think it was like a 0.19, 0.2 something on the side of the road. Well, he didn't resign. And then, what was it, last summer, or, last year, Christy Haswell, Sheridan County Commissioner, got popped for a DUI, and she didn't resign. So the question is, should elected officials who put their constituents at risk resign from office? What do you think?
Depends on who it is.
Oh, really?
There are some, the slightest, you got a parking ticket, you got to resign because you have no respect for the law. That's a tough one. It's really easy for somebody who's a teetotaler to point a finger and get accusatory. Virtually all of these functions that we go to, they have an open bar.
Right.
And I think it even mentioned that in that article that she said, well, there was an open bar there and they had
whatever.
Okay, that really doesn't hold any water.
Or booze, for that matter.
Yeah.
Neither did her glass. It seemed to have a hole in the bottom.
I wouldn't give it a blanket. Absolutely, they should have to resign. I think there are some circumstances, but certainly you could make that case.
Well, here's my problem with it. If you drive drunk, you don't realize this at the point, or at least I would hope not. But literally, you are putting everybody on the road at risk, and you're the one that made the poor decision not to plan ahead. You're the one that didn't get a ride, which you should know that. I mean, if you are, if you're an elected official, a mayor or a county commissioner, and you're going to go out and booze it up, you should have a designated driver already set up. You should have people in your phone that you say, hey, oops, I've had a drink. Hey, can you come give me a ride? And in fact, I have personally told an elected official in Sheridan County at a function, look, I will give you a ride home.
Yep, I didn't listen though, did I?
Well, no, you didn't, but neither did the other person I was actually talking to.
Now, that's true. It's just a matter of responsibility. It's a matter of respect for the law and respect for other people. And I think you have to be wise. We are held to a higher standard than
Yeah, and that's where I was
everybody
going to
else.
go next, right? Should elected officials be held to a higher standard? I mean, what do you think?
Not me, but everybody else.
Of course not. Well, and that's the thing, right? Like you are elected to represent your constituents. That you're expected to conduct yourself in a manner that your constituents would appreciate. And I don't think getting boozed up and hopping in your car and endangering every people fits in that category.
I think a lot of it comes down to showing respect for what we do. And we supposed to be able to make laws that would guide society, that would protect citizens. And if you show contempt for a law and just ignore it, why should anybody else care?
Exactly right. And we have to have respect for the law, and that's something that we've been struggling with as I guess as a culture, as a society for quite a long time. I mean, you've seen flash mobs smashing windows and stealing a whole bunch of stuff and nobody going to jail, cities burning down, that sort of thing.
Yeah, when you start talking about illegal immigration, we hear about it every day, and about protests and people fighting back and Newscomb and all of the silly things that he's saying. Um, if you got a problem with the way immigration works, where can you show me one time where they have offered a bill or a solution to changing the immigration laws so that they're not so burdened, so they're not so cumbersome, so people could actually immigrate more easily? I've never seen them do that. All they do is just say, we don't like that law, so we're going to ignore it.
Exactly. Right. I mean, you're in a position to change the law, but instead we just ignore it. And I mean, it's a big problem with, I mean, how many things have happened, whether it's the BLM riots or, the George Floyd stuff or, politicians, Jeffrey Epstein. Oops, I promised I'm not going to talk about him anymore. I'm just going to mention his name. But I mean, it's just complete disrespect for the law. And I don't know, obviously the mayor and Cody got arrested. So, I mean, she's going to be prosecuted. The question is, what will the punishment be? And you won't hear me say this very often, but I was very pleased with the outcome of the whole Christy Haswell thing. Everything that I was told is she got the sentence that pretty much every first timer would get. I mean, in Wyoming, you're not a real Wyoming resident until you've had at least 7 DUIs, I've been told. Wait, no, I was talking to Bill Novotny. All right, moving on from the Cowboy. Now, here is a headline I didn't think that we would see. University of Wyoming President Ed Seidel says he's stepping down. Not immediately, of course, next June when his contract expires. But evidently he wanted to give everybody a heads up. The University of Wyoming president has informed the UW Board of Trustees that he will step down from his position when his contract expires on June 30th of next year. Seidel shared his plans with the board 1 year in advance to give them time for thoughtful, inclusive search. Of course, he had to use that word inclusive in there. That's him in a nutshell. For the university's next president to help with the transition, according to the statement released Monday. I, for one, am not sad to see Ed Seidel go down the road.
I'm not really sad to see him go, but I'm glad he's going to stick around through the budget process. This is one of my agencies that I'm supposed to liaison for. I already have a relationship built there. I already know what I'm dealing with, and he with me. And so I see that as a good thing. I don't know. Ed's a mixed bag to me. I see the things that you're talking about, but I've also gotten to know him a little bit, and most people have a human side as well.
So you should, if you've paid attention to Cowboy state politics for any length of time, you should already know my position on it. Ed Seidel was the pro-DEI president of the university, and he's since backed away from that, but there were a lot of things that he did on that campus that were just absolutely just crazy. And when it came out with what the university was doing, $1.6 million to go to cultural affairs and the DEI office. Maybe for some other universities, that's not a lot of money, but it is in Wyoming, $1.6 million for LGBTQ type stuff. I found that to be outrageous.
Yeah, I don't think it was unprecedented at all. I think it was just kind of business as normal. And nobody had ever raised a fuss until we came along in the house a few years ago and started shaking the tree a little bit.
Well, all right. So I did prepare a video for this segment, and what I'm going to show you is the video of me confronting Ed Seidel. Now, I need to give you a little bit of a backstory before we hit the video. Cowboy State Politics had learned that the university was hosting a drag show, which, I mean, that is nothing out of the ordinary for drag shows to happen on college campuses. I think that happens pretty regularly now. Not that I'm in favor of it at all, but certainly the university should not be paying for it, and it shouldn't be held on campus, in my opinion. Well, anyway, Cowboy State Politics wired up somebody with an undercover camera and sent them to this event. And it was the most horrible video that I think I've ever watched. At one point in the video, and you can go back on the YouTube page and you can find the whole video here. Part of which I'm going to show you here in just a minute. But anyway, in the video, one of the attendees asks a presenter, "Hey, so what's your favorite part of doing this whole drag show thing?" And the presenter says, "Oh, the kids. I just love the kids and their energy." And then you hear the other presenter in the video say, "F the kids." And that was just the mild part of that undercover video. But let's go ahead and play me confronting Ed Seidel about this. Go ahead and hit it.
So what it is a drag show at the university that happened on April the 13th. And in it,
pause, Ken. Okay, now it's really hard to hear in that, but when I was asking him, he could very clearly hear what was said. It's just, I didn't have a lot of equipment back then when we were recording video, so that's why it's kind of hard to hear. But the section I'm playing for him is the one I just described, where they say "F the kids." All right, go ahead and finish it out.
Did you hear what she said?
No, I didn't. I couldn't hear.
So he says, in ballroom, we say pussy a lot. We say pussy and cunt. That's what he says. So do you think that's an effective use or an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars?
Well, I wouldn't say such things, so just say that, but...
Well, it happened in the education auditorium, sir.
Students will do interesting things sometimes. I was not there. I didn't see it. I wouldn't say such things myself.
Okay. Well, there's a lot more where that comes from.
All right.
At one point in the video, and I'd be happy to provide this to you, but at one point in the video, they say "F the kids."
Okay.
I mean, do you think that Wyoming citizens would appreciate our university doing this?
I would not. I would think many people would find that offensive.
Okay. Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's just the end of the video. So the best part of that video is when he turns around and he's got the wide eyes, and it's the doe in the headlights. Oh crap! I've been caught. So nothing really came out in the news about that. But what did happen is at the Board of Trustees meeting, there was a big blow up about that investigation. And Ed Seidel's response to it was to set up the free speech police on the university campus. Now, of course, publicly, it was supposed, report anybody who's being mean to anybody. But really what it was an attempt to stamp out dissent that was, voicing any concerns about any of this DEI stuff. So I, for one, I'm not all that disappointed to see Ed Seidel go. Now, there was a controversy not that long ago that he was trying to set up, move some university money around. And I don't know. I really think that he got the short end of the stick on that one. There's two sides to every story. But, anyway, I'm not all that displeased to see him go.
We did offer President Seidel the opportunity to come on the show.
Yeah, we did.
And tell his side of the story. And I kind of wish he had done that. I tend to think that part of this resignation is due to the fallout. I think he lost the confidence of the people in the university themselves. And I think part of that reason notice I said I think. And I think part of that reason may have been that he realized that they were under great scrutiny. He could see the way the wind was blowing. So when the legislature said, we're going to get rid of DEI, he tried at best to at least hide it in other places or get it out of there.
And that's part of the problem with him.
Yeah, and I think this is part of the recourse to him.
And I think the other side of it, and you mentioned this before we went on the air this morning, that this may be an example of the left eating their own. I mean, Ed Seidel is not a conservative, nor did he ever pretend to be. But he did start to go along with many of the things that the legislature mandated. And he could have very easily said, okay, well, the legislature is not going to pay for these programs, and so we'll just pay for it with private money, which I don't buy that argument at all. I mean, I've never bought the argument that, well, the money we get from, the public, we're going to put it over here in this pot. The money we get privately, we'll put it over in this pot, and never the two shall meet. I think that's a bogus argument because it's all money you're using, and just because you can say, well, your money didn't go to this, I don't think that's appropriate.
Yeah, look at the same thing. There's been a discussion lately about people on welfare, and I think one of the things we talked about in a private discussion was you see somebody who's on welfare sporting a brand new tattoo.
Yeah.
Kind of goes against the grain. You don't have money to buy food. You got to rely on the people, but you got money now to go out and get this tattoo. The food money may not have directly gone to there, but you wouldn't have been able to afford it if you actually had to buy food first. So.
Exactly right. Well, anyway, so I guess in a year, the university is going to be looking for a new guy, and I wish him luck. And Ed Seidel, wish you luck too. So if you want to be part of today's program, the phone number here in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. If there's something on your mind that you want to talk about, go ahead and give me a call. We'll leave the number up there on the screen so that you can write it down or whatever. But go ahead and give me a call. One more time. That number is 307-374-8989. Let's see here. We're a little bit early, but let's go ahead and take our first break. And when we come back, gas prices. Have you noticed that they're down? And does it really mean anything? We'll talk about it when we get back.
Ever since gold backing was removed from the dollar, the value has dropped significantly over the past few decades. Experts say this is one of the main reasons goods are more expensive and your savings are worth less each year. How would you know how many dollars to save for retirement if the valuation of the dollar changes over time? Would you work all week for that $20 gold piece? Let's look at the valuation of this coin from the 1970s to today. When President Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, this coin traded for about $275. Today, it trades for about $14,000. Buying and holding rare coins using only a fraction of your portfolio is our suggested way to save for the future. Call U.S. Coin Capital at 1-800-878-2646 to get your free United States Gold and Silver Buyer's Guide.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Welcome to Lessons in Civility by Morton Buildings. Gentlemen, is your garage completely jam-packed full of all of your unnecessary crap, and your lovely wife has been on your tail, nagging you nonstop to clean it out? It's not because she just wants to incessantly irritate you. Chivalry dictates that you should clear out a space so she can park her car inside and you don't end up sleeping on the couch anymore. To do that, contact Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Not only are they the experts in metal building construction, they're also skilled at keeping you out of the doghouse. One more time, their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. This has been Lessons in Civility from Morton Buildings. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics, live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble. Pretty much everywhere. And don't forget about the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can find that on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Amazon, really anywhere you want. Just make sure you subscribe and follow the program. That way you know every time I drop a brand new episode. Speaking of things that drop, have you noticed that the gas prices are down a little bit? From the Daily Wire, Trump admin cheers lowest summer gas prices in years, unleashing American energy. All right, so let's just start with the headline. Now, it is true that the Trump administration has cleared the way for a lot of oil and natural gas drilling. But that doesn't mean that it's happening right now. This isn't something that you can just flip a switch and people fire up the drilling rig and go out and pop a hole in the ground. That's not how things work. The Biden administration was so successful in preventing oil and gas exploration that they pretty much had everything at a standstill. So while it's true that the Trump administration has opened up, avenues for people to go out and drill and explore, that's absolutely in process right now. That doesn't mean that any companies really have started pumping out American oil. So the drop in gas prices probably isn't necessarily, just my opinion, isn't necessarily contributed to that. Although oil futures are traded on expectations. I mean, that's basically what it is. They're called futures. But really, it's people trading on what is going to happen in the future, how much oil is going to be available a week, a month, 6 months down the road. And a lot of times that has a direct influence on gas prices. From the piece, and I quote, prices at the pump keep dropping thanks to President Trump unleashing American energy, White House Press Secretary, Assistant Press Secretary Taylor Rogers told the Daily Wire. President Trump ended Joe Biden's reckless war on American energy, and he's making life more affordable for families as a result. As of Friday, the nation's highest gas prices are in California, where the average cost is $4.49 a gallon. Hawaii and Washington were the only other states that were above $4 a gallon, averaging $4.47. Mississippi has the country's cheapest gas at $2.72 a gallon. Quote, summer gas prices are the cheapest they have been in 4 years, thanks to consistently low crude prices this year, AAA spokesperson Kellen Howell told the Daily Wire. Crude oil supply is currently outweighing demand. In 2002, midway through the Biden administration, AAA found that for the first time since it began tracking prices, the national average for a gallon of gas reached $5. Fuel prices remained elevated for the remainder of former President Joe Biden's term, well above the $2.39 figure that marked the start of his presidency. So he went from $2.39 all the way up to an average of around $5 a gallon. And a lot of that was due to his immediately shutting off oil and gas transportation in major pipelines throughout the United States. I mean, there were a lot of pipelines that Trump had greenlighted. The Keystone Pipeline was a good example. That thing was turned on, turned off, turned on, turned off. By turn on, turn off, I mean Construction started, construction was halted. Construction continued, construction was halted. So Trump is in office, and oil companies pretty much know what's going to happen. Gas prices ticked up 1% in June, according to the most recent Consumer Price Index report, but prices have remained low this summer despite tensions in the Middle East. The Trump administration has taken steps to prioritize lower fuel costs. The recently passed One Big Beautiful Bill, which, again, no longer has the word beautiful in it. I've noticed that leftist legislators like to do that. They remove words out of the title. Somehow, it makes them feel better or something. Anyway, but it encourages fossil fuel development and cuts tax credits and subsidies from green energy, the administration has said. Having efficient, reliable, and affordable energy is the key to American security. So, yeah, it's true. Gas prices are down. When I came to the studio this morning, I think the gas price here in Sheridan was like $2.90 something, $2.97. Something like that. So still a little bit higher in Wyoming, but it's trending downward, which is a good thing, especially if you want to travel around. From the Blaze, prosecuting Obama. Trump makes shocking statement as he commends Gabbard for the bombshell evidence. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you probably heard over the weekend that DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, released and again, it's one of these reports that I think everybody knew that Obama was intimately involved in the creation of the Russia hoax, that it never really was. It never really amounted to anything. Even though they impeached a president over it, they continued to prosecute him over it. There were wiretaps, Operation Crossfire Hurricane. They went all out trying to find something on President Trump. And as it turns out from the report that was released, I guess it was released on Friday, that Barack Obama absolutely tampered or changed intelligence reports that were given to him, that essentially his intelligence people came in and said, there's nothing here. There's no there. There's no Russian collusion. And when they came out of the meeting, oh, yeah. Yep. President Trump and the Russians, they were good pals. So I found a little montage of our pal Adam Schiff saying that he absolutely has evidence of Russian collusion. And he went on media reports all over the place, swore up and down that he had absolute evidence. And then, as it turned out, it never existed. Here's Adam Schiff.
In which the Russians offered help, which we know they did. The campaign accepted help, which we know they did. The Russians then delivered help, which we know they did.
There is circumstantial evidence of collusion.
The case is more than that, and I can't go into the particulars, but there is more than circumstantial evidence now. So,
you've said on more than one occasion that you've seen ample evidence of the Trump campaign's Russia collusion. Last March, you said you had more than circumstantial evidence of treasonous collusion with Russia.
I've certainly said that there's ample evidence of collusion.
Can you agree that there has been no evidence of collusion, coordination, or conspiracy that has been presented thus far between the Trump campaign and Russia?
No, I don't agree with that at all. I think there's plenty of evidence of collusion or conspiracy. But we do know this. The Russians offered help. The campaign accepted help. The Russians gave help, and the president made full use of that help. And that is pretty damning. Reviewing the evidence that I have.
Yeah. Reviewing the evidence that you don't have. But here's what the Blaze says. And I quote, bombshell evidence has come out surrounding many top Democrats' apparent obstruction of the 2016 election. According to Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, this, quote, overwhelming evidence shows that the Obama administration politicized and weaponized intelligence surrounding the Trump-Russia hoax in 2016. This has led many Republican leaders to feel vindicated nearly 10 years since what some are calling a conspiracy. Quote, the panel was fantastic on prosecuting Obama and the thugs who have just been unequivocally exposed on the highest level election fraud. On Friday, Gabbard told Fox News that the documents she was declassifying showed evidence of a treasonous conspiracy in 2016 committed by officials at the highest level of our government. These documents detail this is from Tulsi Gabbard. Quote, these documents detail a treasonous conspiracy by officials at the highest level of the Obama White House to subvert the will of the American people and try to usurp the president from fulfilling his mandate. On Saturday, President Trump commended Gabbard for her historic release of these documents. Trump only singled out former President Obama in his response. on to the news of the declassification and even mentioned the idea of prosecuting him. Okay, I'm sure all of us would love to prosecute Barack Obama, but really, how are you going to arrest Barack Obama? I mean, obviously, he was definitely involved in this whole thing, but there's no reason to assume that we could send out the FBI to put bracelets on him. I mean, how could you possibly do that to a former president? I mean, it's kind of the rule that former presidents don't get arrested, and if it's Barack Obama, well, I just don't see how that's possible. Except, of course, that it is. Go ahead and put up that picture, Ken. Oh, make her full screen there. Oh, wait, no, we can arrest a former president. That's that. If you remember right, that was the mugshot that was taken in Florida after they arrested President Donald Trump. So evidently, we can arrest and we can prosecute former presidents. And if it is indeed true that Obama was the one that tampered with intelligence evidence to just cook up this whole Russia collusion scheme, then he absolutely needs to be prosecuted. Shortly after posting that message about Tulsi Gabbard, Trump also reposted a clip of Gabbard's interview on Fox News. In the clip, he quoted Gabbard, quote, "We had in President Obama and his leadership team people who did not want to accept the will of the American people in electing Donald Trump in 2016 and therefore cooked up this treasonous conspiracy to effectively launch a years-long coup against the sitting president of the United States." And I, for one, Agent 29, I don't know how you feel about this, but I really was pretty happy to hear the word coup. And let's just kind of explain what that is. In other countries, a coup is when some other group, the military or whatever, seizes power and gets rid of the current leadership of that country. And we see it a lot in, kind of third world countries where, the military just takes over. But that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to prosecute and remove a duly elected president of the United States. I mean, that's a coup.
Yeah, a coup is not what you saw on January 6th.
No, not at all. That definitely was a riot, but it was not an attempt to take over the government. Though, I mean, the Democrats claimed for what 10 years, 8 years that it was an insurrection, an attempt to take over the U.S. government, but it really wasn't. This, however, absolutely was, and it appears to have been orchestrated from the top levels of our government. The president.
Golly, Bullwinkle, those fellas are going to rob the bank.
Oh, that's terrible.
You know what we got to do, don't you?
Sure, we got to withdraw our money quick.
No, we got to warn them.
Why? They know they're going to rob the bank.
Well, Barack Obama and most of the people in the Democrat Party knew exactly what they were doing. They knew that none of it was really true. And that kind of, and this is one of those that the chickens always come home to roost. It also kind of means that Liz Cheney knew that this was a bunch of bull crap too. And, though she used January 6th to go after Donald Trump, she was absolutely involved in this whole Russia collusion thing. The January 6th illegitimate committee or whatever, unselect committee, is what Donald Trump calls it. I mean, it was the same sort of thing, an open attempt to remove the president of the United States. And it's, I mean, Agent 29, where do you think this is going to go? I mean, do you think that it's going to go anywhere? Do you think we're going to see people in handcuffs? What do you think?
I really don't think it's going to go anywhere. I mean, I would love to see it happen, but I think there's going to be some sort of something else that comes up and people get distracted and this kind of gets pushed by the side. Don't know.
I hope not. I mean, we're talking about the crime of the century here.
I would love to see him carried away in bracelets, but
okay. So another question. So which one is bigger, the AutoPen scandal or the Russia collusion scandal? I mean, they're both pretty huge. They both involve different groups trying to take over the power of the presidency. But which one's bigger, do you think?
Let's see. Would I rather die of drowning or a gunshot wound to the gut? Which one is worse?
I don't know. They're both pretty bad.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. I think maybe the Russia collusion, because it was so widespread, it was actually, as you pointed out, it was kind of bipartisan. There were,
Oh yeah, they're never Trumpers all
yeah,
over this
there
thing
were the
too.
never Trumpers involved in that, and I think that makes it a broader base, a bigger, deeper issue. But the auto pen thing, they're both treason.
I mean, they're both treason. So let's just define what treason is, and it is absolutely taking actions that are opposed to the United States government. That you're I'm trying to depose a duly elected president. That is treason. It is. I don't know where this thing goes. I want to say that the FBI is going to walk into Barack Obama's office and say, "Time to go, pal. It's your turn for a mugshot. Let's see how you look," in pinstripes. But I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't know where this is going to go.
I think one of the calculated problems with that is what's going to happen on the streets. They came and they arrest our guy, and we kind of put our trust in the courts and know that we're going to work this out. We go and arrest their guy, and cities are going to burn.
Well, true.
And so I think there are people that are weighing that and saying,
yeah, but what about the rule of law?
Well,
I mean,
I completely agree with you, but I think there is a lot of pragmatism in a lot of these people, and that's why I say I think what they'll do is come up with a diversion, divert the people's minds away from this, and come another way to go.
Oh,
we'll
I'm
see.
sure there's going to
We'll
be an
see.
attempt, to divert your attention over here. Don't watch the other hand. Pay attention to this. But really, I mean, a lot of the problems that we're experiencing have their origins in a lack of respect for the law. That's how we started this program, talking about the Cody Mayor, and how there's lots of different people that have positions of power that have committed crimes, and then nothing ever happens, and then you wonder why people don't respect the law, and I hate to say it, but a lot of it goes back to the riots that happened. Cities were burning, nobody got arrested, the ransacking businesses, and nothing ever happened. And I mean, in my mind, if nothing happens out of this, I honestly don't know why anybody would have any respect for the law. I mean, if you can't hold your elected leaders accountable, then there's no law at all. I mean, it's rules for thee, but not for me. So I hope that something happens, though I'm not all that optimistic about it. All right, let's move on to the Blaze. Again, socialist surge. The Minneapolis mayor left in the lurch after the DFL party endorses the far-left challenger obsessed with race. And this is this guy called Omar Fattah. I think that's how you pronounce his name. But he is absolutely a committed socialist communist. He's not unlike the Mamdani guy in New York, except, of course, that this guy has fewer qualifications, and he's not a very good speaker. But we've got a video of this Omar Fattah saying that the only reason he's running is to unite America, or his city, Minneapolis, with his home in Somalia. Watch this.
Ask for him and pray for him. I understand that our Somali communities are all connected to each other here in Minnesota and back home, and I ask for your support. There's always been a link between our community here as well as back home, and I'm running to bridge that gap and unite all of us and represent all of us, because when we succeed here, we succeed everywhere. And I'm hoping to do that just like Abdurazak, inshallah.
So we're not running to make Minneapolis great again. We're not running to make America great again. No. This guy's running to unite Somalis here and back home in Somalia. Far-left candidates for mayoral positions have been gaining traction across the United States. And it's not just in Minneapolis or New York. It's pretty much happening across the country in different jurisdictions. I mean, I find it to be really scary. I mean, it is the worst possible scenario, or next to the worst possible scenario of, multiculturalism that we talk about a lot.
Yeah, exactly. That was my point. We've gotten away from e pluribus unum. We're no longer trying to have everybody come here and be Americans. And unless we unify around something, we're going to be divided. And this is absolutely divisive.
Oh, well, and I think we can take it a lot farther than that. The Mamdani, I mean, he has said so many crazy things. And I've got a piece here. Let's see here. Here we go. I brought this to you, and let me just make this full screen and throw it up there. But Zoran Mamdani casually says he would support the abolition of property in resurfaced video. And I mean, it's just one of the pieces I referenced last week. But this Mamdani guy, he has openly said that he's a communist. There's videos of him calling for for us to take over the means of production. He is a far left radical, and it's just another example of communists, socialists trying to take over high elected offices in America. And this Fatah, he's just, he's running for mayor in Minneapolis. But I mean, being the mayor of a major city, just like New York or anywhere else. I mean, that's pretty shocking. I don't think that we've really seen that in any time in the past. But back to the piece. Let's see here. Fatah won the endorsement of the DFL, the Democrats, over the incumbent mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, who is also a Democrat. Frey responded to the news hours later, criticizing the selection process in which he lost the endorsement. Quote, I look forward to a full debate with Senator Fatah over our records and visions of Minneapolis's future. Onward to November, he added to the same post. Mayor Frey's campaign manager, Sam Schulenberg, likewise criticized the process by what Fatah beat Frey for the endorsement. Quote, this election should be decided by the entire city rather than a small group of people who became delegates, particularly in light of the extremely flawed and irregular conduct of this convention. Voters will now have a clear choice between the records of the leadership of Senator Fatah, State Senator Fatah is what he's talking about, and Mayor Frey. We look forward to taking our vision to the voters in November. Well, it's a question of how far left has the left actually gone? And I think that we are seeing and I think it's pretty obvious that we're seeing a resurgence of the radical left in Wyoming, in America. There's another piece from The Blaze. Campaign office for Ocasio-Cortez vandalized with far left message. And I quote, the vandals were apparently angry at the Congresswoman for not being extremist enough. Quote, vandals who struck a campaign office for far-left Democratic Representative AOC of New York wrote a left-wing message on a sign at the site. Vandals had splashed red paint at the office and left a sign that read, AOC funds genocide in Gaza. Ocasio-Cortez has been accused by the right of flirting with anti-Semitism, but she's also been excoriated by many on the left for not being sufficiently anti-Israel for their tastes. She has been actively campaigning for socialist Mamdani, who won the Democrat nomination in the New York City mayoral election. So it's AOC. She's radical enough. She's campaigning for a radical communist to be the mayor of New York, and her campaign office is getting vandalized because she's not left enough. Wow.
I just wanted to say thank you for not making me put up her picture.
Yeah, well, we put up enough disgusting pictures on this show that I figured we could leave her out of it. But just think about this. So, campaigning for a communist isn't radical enough. How far left could we possibly go? I mean, a lot of us think that communism is probably the furthest left you could probably go on the political spectrum. I mean, at some point there has to be an end, right? How crazy is crazy enough? I mean, it's the Looney Tune in the insane asylum. Two Looney Tunes in the insane asylum trying to figure out who's more nuts than the other one. I mean, it's just amazing to me. But the end of this piece says, let's see here. In November, Ocasio-Cortez blamed the pro-Israel lobbying group American Israel Public AIPAC for the devastating losses the Democrats suffered in the last election, leading some to accuse her of anti-Semitism. In October, the New York City chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America said members were considering to vote to censure Ocasio-Cortez. Wow. When you get censured, when you're a full-blown progressive socialist and you get censured by the Democratic Socialists, I think that speaks volumes to where we are as a culture. I mean, it really is the furthest extreme of the left that is gaining traction in a lot of communities. And, I don't know. I don't really think that we're seeing that in Wyoming, but I don't know that we're far off. I mean, the last protest I was at, I showed you guys pictures of some of the signs. It says, "We are the coming storm," or we are the storm, not the coming storm. But still, I mean, thank God we live in Wyoming, huh? I mean, just absolutely incredible. Let's see here. What else we got? Now, on the other side of things, Chris Bedford has a piece in The Blaze, and he claims that we're finally living through the conservative revolution we've always needed. All right, so this is the other extreme of what we just talked about. So the question is, are we really seeing a conservative revolution? I mean, there's certainly, we have the House, the Senate, and the presidency, but there's a lot of redcoats in the Republican Party that are not in favor of conservatism, pretty much at all. Barry Crago, Bo Beitman, those type of folks. But here's what Chris Bedford says in The Blaze. Quote, "If you spend an inordinate amount of time online, doom scrolling as it's called," I had to look up that word to find out what doom scrolling is. Podcast hopping. Don't hop when you're on Cowboy State Politics. Just continue listening. There's no need to hop around or listen to anybody else. And trading theories with your pals on Signal. You might be fixated on every twist in the Jeffrey Epstein saga. I'm not. We're not going to delve into that at all, even though, have you noticed that it keeps cropping up in just different articles, even though I'm trying to avoid it? I mean, just amazing. Or maybe you've convinced yourself that the transgender sports fight doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of American politics. That would be a serious mistake. Conservatives are finally acting like revolutionaries, while prominent Democrat mayors are screeching and sobbing in the streets. You'd be missing the most significant conservative revolution Washington has seen in decades, maybe ever. Start with sports. The right's victory in pushing back transgender ideology on this front marks a turning point, not just because it helps women's athletics, not even because it polls well. It matters because it's the first real cultural win for truth over lies that I've seen in my adult life. And without that kind of victory, without truth, nothing else can be fixed. It might feel strange or even deflating to call broad public agreement on something so obvious a major victory, but consider what has happened. Okay, so let's kind of look, take a view of the last 4 years. We ended the Trump presidency with a guy saying, well, we're the adults in the room. We're going to fix all of this. And they started putting in place policies that are pretty much diametrically opposed to what a lot of even Democrats, American Democrats, even think, that men can become women and women can become men, or giraffes or rhinoceroses or whatever. And most of us know that none of that is at all true. That the transgender movement really was one of politics, and it didn't really have any basis in reality. And yet the Biden administration continued to push it. There were all sorts of things. The Department of Education saying you had to have transgender bathrooms. We've had the sexually explicit book fight, which, I think if that one's still going on, there are still librarians saying, oh, no, there's nothing wrong with these pornographic books in the library. But think about where we were 4 years ago and compare that to now. I definitely get the feeling that in many cases we're returning to sanity, that there are a lot of folks that are rejecting, a lot of that crazy ideology. But my question is that rejection of what happened during the Biden administration, is that just virtue signaling, or is that actually what's happening? Now, in Wyoming, we have the benefit of, being a pretty conservative state, even though, as I mentioned, as we all know, there's a lot of rhinos in our legislature. We've still been able to pass some pretty significant conservative pieces of legislation. One of those is the ban on men and women's sports. I think that that's tremendous. Even in Wyoming, the Title IX fight was long and it was arduous, and it took a lot of hard work to get that put in place. And the Biden administration, and I don't really think that there were that many people, except for, Julie Jarvis and Elisa Campbell and, a lot of the radicals in the Wyoming legislature. Really, there weren't that many people pushing back on it. We were able to we were able to put in place an ultrasound bill. In fact, we got both houses, the House and the Senate, to overturn the governor's veto on that one. I think that was tremendous. We were able to get rid of the ban on gun-free zones. And so there are a lot of things that happened in Wyoming that I don't know that could have happened elsewhere. And yeah, Ken, you actually heard me say something nice about the Senate. So, you can back off of that a little bit. But I think across the entire country, though, there really was a pretty hard push to go towards the radical left. And I do think that we're returning, for lack of a better way to put it, we're returning back to a little bit of sanity now. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't radical progressives that are, in elective offices, whether at the state level or at the national level. But I tend to agree with Chris Bedford that we're seeing a lot of cultural wins in the cultural department. The anti-abortion fight, even though in Wyoming our abortion bans are tied up in court. Who knows what's going to happen at the Wyoming Supreme Court with those? But what we have been getting some major cultural wins. Bedford goes on. It might feel strange or even deflating to call broad public agreement on something so obvious a major victory, but consider what has happened. Picture a living Joseph Stalin stepping to a podium admitting, yes, the mass graves are real. The people already knew. They had lived it, but for years they were forced to lie or risk losing their livelihoods. That's what Americans experienced just last year. We lived under a giant state-sanctioned falsehood. This country has a habit of moving on too quickly from moral failure, but conservatives shouldn't forget what it felt like to endure the Democrats' 4-year crusade. Just think about some of the events that were held on the lawn of the White House. How many of us remember the transgender folks that were walking around half naked at the White House? I mean, that the one place where you think, you have to you're supposed to wear a suit when you walk into the White House. You're not supposed to be around the president unless you're dressed really nice. And yet on the front lawn of the White House, there were folks parading around half naked. The entire administration moved as far as they possibly could towards the left wing. And all of us were kind of forced to go along with it. And in some cases, Bedford's right that, we would have, lost our livelihoods if we didn't go along with it. The White House fired or bought out more than 100,000 federal bureaucrats, made the largest tax cut in U.S. history permanent. And now we're talking about today. Even with the geriatric Senate that still leans on liberal Republicans, and proved that America can hit its enemies hard without getting dragged into nation building. It's talking about Iran. That same tax cut included $75 billion for interior immigration enforcement just 2 weeks ago. Think about this. The Republican Party has held the White House and both chambers of Congress 3 times since before 9/11. An atrocity committed by illegal aliens. This is the first time the GOP has used the power to deliver real results. During the previous 2 trifectas, Republican leaders pursued amnesty. That is something that we're hearing talk about in Congress. Over the weekend, I saw several articles of different people, Republicans in Congress, batting around the idea of amnesty after we just won the presidency, largely due to the Biden failure on immigration, or the intentional failure on immigration. And so right now, I tend to agree with Chris Bedford that we are experiencing kind of a conservative revolution. But the problem is that it's always like one step back from the cliff. It only takes one election to completely throw this in the toilet. I mean, all that would have to happen is the Democrats to take over the House, and then we wouldn't be able to do anything.
You talk about the pendulum.
Yeah.
The pendulum swings back and forth. I saw this a couple days ago, and I just wanted to throw that up and get your reaction. Just look at the headline.
All right. So my reaction to this is Rahm Emanuel is a traditional progressive. He was the mayor of Chicago, but I don't think that he is I don't think that he wants to be outwardly one of the radicals. He wants to try to make himself appear more centrist. And I mean, there's been some talk of Rahm Emanuel wanting to run for president in 2028. So I don't know. I guess my reaction to that is he's trying to appeal to the middle. Oh, well, we do. It is time for a break, isn't it? All right, let's go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, another guy you don't want to talk about again, Beto O'Rourke.
Everybody say,
It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to continue to get stronger. This program is expanding at a rate that I don't even know how to keep up with it. You can listen to the live program on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble. And don't forget about the Cowboy State Politics podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. And I'm telling you, Monday's program was a lot of fun to do. Go make sure that you go check it out. It's available now. You can find it anywhere you want. Now, if you want to be part of the program, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. Go ahead and give me a call. Whatever's on your mind. Now, we went into the break talking about where we had been and where we are now. And as Agent 29 so adeptly brought up, is that we have politics works on a pendulum. And when it swings further to the left, eventually it's got to come back to the right. The only question is, how far to the right is it going to go? Agent 29, we haven't done any of our Stump the Chump sound bites for a while. So what do you got this morning?
We're calling it off the wall now.
Off the wall.
Deference to you. So.
Okay, well, thank you. You start.
So this is Carolyn Levitt, and I remember some of the first press conferences I ever watched years and years ago. And it seemed like the White House.
Did they
press
have TV back then?
Yes, they did.
Okay.
They did. We had to put on the rabbit ears and hold the tinfoil just right.
Okay.
To get our one station.
Excellent.
But it did seem to me that the people in the White House press corps were of a certain respectable caliber.
You would think,
and
yeah.
So this is Carolyn Levitt. I love the girl. Here you go.
protests on Saturday would be met with force. Can you clarify what kind of protest President Trump does support or find acceptable?
The president absolutely supports peaceful protests. He supports the First Amendment. He supports the right of Americans to make their voices heard. He does not support violence of any kind. He does not support assaulting law enforcement officers who are simply trying to do their job. It's very clear for the president what he supports and what he does not. Unfortunately for Democrats, that line has not been made clear, and they've allowed this unrest and this violence to continue, and the president has had to step in.
What question? So if there were peaceful protests on Saturday for the military parade, President Trump would allow that?
Of course the president supports peaceful protests. What a stupid question. Raquel.
Thank you so much, Caroline.
What a stupid question. I'm more interested in the origin of that question. That, does the president support peaceful protests? Well, of course he does. That's the First Amendment. Why would President Trump not support
Well, he's the one.
protests?
He's the one responsible for January 6th. After all, he's the one that stirred that up.
No,
So
no,
they're-
he's not.
Yeah, I know, but that's their thinking. Is they're trying to lay a trap, and I'm sure that was part of what was. It just reminds me that they've only got like 2 or 3 different lines of reasoning.
Well, that's all they have left.
Yeah, and it's pretty sad. And I have to say that the press corps here in Wyoming is not much better.
No, they're not. The few press conferences I've been to in the Wyoming Capitol, there is always a crazy question, and usually it comes from one of the smaller media outlets, Oil City News or Cap City News. They've got some real winners working for them. But where I wanted to go with that soundbite is the left always tries to, and it's almost like they are incapable of the Martin Luther King type of protests, that peacefully march to, not engage in violence, to not destroy any buildings. The left seems to always gravitate towards more violence, that if we destroy more property, if we hurt more people, if we make it more shocking, then more people will listen. And I mean, that is part and parcel of the true radical left ideology, I guess. And it goes all the way back to, I think you can take it all the way back to 1917 with the Bolshevik Revolution. The Bolsheviks were the people that the Soviets counted on to create chaos. And the idea is that you create more chaos and you overwhelm the system, and then the top is going to come down. So really what the radical left is trying to do, attacking ICE officers, vandalizing buildings, even including AOC's campaign headquarters, it's an attempt to get the administration to act. And their thinking is when the administration comes down, then it's going to create more, I guess, sentiment for their cause. Look at the mean Republicans. Look at how they're clamping down on protesters. And you're right that the question was intended to trap Caroline Leavitt with January 6th, but it was also to set it up to where, maybe they could trap the president to say, I'm not in favor of any protests at all. But it's a trap, and you have to understand where the left is coming from, because they are the people. Now they are the people that absolutely they're ready for violence.
I think there's another layer there. You talked about it going back to a certain point. It goes back to the very, very beginning. There's nothing new under the sun, God said. Jesus said that we're going to be like the smell of death to them that are lost. Christians, they're afraid of us. They're afraid, I don't know, are they afraid that we might actually be right? I think there's an element of that. But the left operates, I believe, out of fear. And so in order to push back, they have to push back with an equal and opposite force, which is to try to make us fear. We're not afraid, therefore we don't have to play those games. Besides that, we're the ones with all the guns.
Yeah, exactly right. All right, what else you got?
Our dear friend, Ronaldus Magnus.
Ronaldus Magnus.
Ever notice how every time a Republican takes office, the Democrats start acting like it's the end of the world? I mean, the minute we cut taxes or trim the budget, they start screaming that the sky is falling. Now, don't get me wrong, I admire their consistency. If the stock market surges, they say it's just helping the rich. And if it crashes, they say, yep, That's what happens under Republican leadership. And don't even get me started on foreign policy. A Republican president could be shaking hands with world leaders and signing peace deals, and they'd say, it must be appeasement. But the minute there's tension overseas, they rush to the nearest camera like it's Black Friday saying, see, we told you the world would catch fire if he was in charge. Now, I've always said, it's fine to disagree on policy. That's democracy. But if your best shot at winning is hoping the American people lose, well, maybe you're in the wrong country.
But that's what they do. The radical left, and by when I say the radical left, I am not excluding those folks in the Democrat Party that are elected. I mean, there are lots of examples of elected officials engaging in hyperbole, just like Reagan was saying. That if the stock market goes up, it's just the billionaires. If it crashes, this is the result of Republican politics. And it is always hyperbole with them because they live in a world of extremes, that it is either their way or it is no way. And a good example of this is the big beautiful bill that passed. There was a piece that was put out by the Babylon Bee, and it said, 60,000 or 60 million people died the day the big beautiful bill was passed. All right. Well, it was the rhetoric of the Democrat Party that if that bill passed, all sorts of people are going to die. We're going to not have any water and any electricity, and the world is going to come to an end. But it's just the Democrats engaging in fear tactics because that's one of the only weapons that they have. I mean, I take it back to the ideas of the left only work in theory. I mean, they're the type of ideas that work if you're in a university building and you're sitting around with a bunch of your egg-headed professors theorizing about what would happen if we had communism. And interestingly enough, they always side with, well, if you spread the wealth around, it's good for everybody. Of course, that was Barack Obama, but their policies don't work in the real world. It's like Margaret Thatcher said, socialism only works until you run out of other people's money to spend. And so the Democrats have to use fear tactics. The world is going to end if we pass the big, beautiful bill. The stock market's going to crash. Everybody's going to die in poverty. But Ronald Reagan is right. Like Republicans, as far as the left is concerned, we can't do anything right. And I think it's kind of a sad commentary where we are as a culture that, no matter what the Democrats say, no matter what the Republicans say, both sides are wrong. And, that's honestly, Ken, that's one of the reasons why we're making an effort to talk to some folks on the other side. And hopefully in the last half hour of the program, I'm going to kind of tease a little interview that we've got coming, hopefully on Friday. But it's another example of how we've got to talk to each other. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to agree. It just means we have to talk to each other, right? And the problem is the left, they're in many cases incapable of having any sort of discussion.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And in September.
Thank you. I think I am too.
In September, we plan to have Josh Doral on, who's the CEO of the Wyoming Business Council. And that promises to be a fascinating discussion. Actually, he and I got along real well in a conversation. We diametrically opposed in how we see things should run. But I got one more soundbite for you. This is Reagan again at his very best.
Mr. President, in talking about the continuing recession tonight, you have blamed mistakes of the past, and you blamed the Congress. Does any of the blame belong to you?
Yes, because for many years I was a Democrat.
Exactly right. It's it's the Democrat Party. Think of let's take the Bill Clinton administration, for example. I know you don't want me to, but it's a really good example. Bill Clinton takes office, and then he takes a hard left turn, even from the radical positions that he was advocating for during the campaign. Well, when his second campaign comes around, now remember, he's got the Monica Lewinsky scandal is brewing, and what does he do? He has to kind of move to the middle a little bit because he went so far to the other direction that he wasn't going to win the election. So he moves to the middle, And my timeline is probably getting a little bit messed up. But what ended up happening is he balanced the budget. The last time the budget has been balanced. And so, when you side with the left, you find out that your policies don't work. I mean, because we're talking about people that don't believe in the free market, they don't believe in freedom. I mean, it's.
I just want to point out it was Newt Gingrich.
Yeah.
That balanced the budget. It wasn't Bill. He went along kicking and screaming because he didn't have a choice.
Well, that's my point, right? He didn't have any choice. I mean, the politics dictated that he had to balance the budget if he was going to, have a successful second term. And I don't think that he had necessarily a successful second term. I think that he's a radical leftist. And I don't know why this just popped into my head. Well, yeah, I do, because we just got rid of another radical leftist. But the Obama administration. Now, if you compare what he did when he was president to Joe Biden, the leftists who were in control, the cabinet members, the cadre, the oligarchy, they called it, they did some things that were even way more radical than Barack Obama. And at the time, I know I was one of those people that said this is the most radical president we've ever had. Well, when Joe Biden gets elected, the folks that were surrounding him, and we still don't know who all those people were, the person who was in charge of the auto pen, who actually made all the decisions, we don't know that. Well, Barack Obama has kind of shifted gears, and now he is full-blown leftist, and when I first saw this video, I didn't exactly, I saw the headline, and I was like, no way did he say this. But he did. Go ahead and play the Obama video. This is from a podcast, Michelle Obama's podcast, which is horrible. You don't want to watch it. But
that's one of the things that I think a lot of times boys need is not just exposure to one guy.
One dad.
One dad. No matter how good the dad
is. He can't be everything.
He can't be everything. And that boy may need somebody to give the boy some perspective on the dad.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
One of the most valuable things I learned as a guy was I had a gay professor in college.
Wow.
At a time when openly gay folks still weren't out of line. Who became one of my favorite professors and was a great guy and would call me out when I started saying stuff that was ignorant. You need that to show empathy and kindness. And by the way, you need that person in your friend group so that if you then have a boy who's gay or non-binary or what have you, they have somebody that they can go, okay, I'm not alone in this.
Oh my God, that boys need a gay role model.
A mentor.
Yes, a mentor even. I don't really have it. I know several people of that persuasion, but I really would never put them in that category as every boy needs a mentor like this. I think that this is leftist Obama at his finest. And I know that I've seen lots of different things online after this video dropped. I don't know how many of them I actually believe, but it's just another example of how far left the Democrat Party has gone. And, this may be a case of, you see who the ex-president actually is after they've left office, because they're no longer encumbered by politics and they don't have to, try to worry about getting elected again. But pretty scary if you think about it. Absolutely shocking. So let's see here. One other guy, and yeah, we've got enough time before the break to do this one. So you remember Beto O'Rourke? I know. We've all tried to forget about him. Just to give you a little, trot down memory lane. Here's the moron that ran against Ted Cruz, Beto O'Rourke. Go ahead and show him the picture. I know you don't want to. Put it up there.
You're getting awfully bossy.
What?
I don't have a Beto O'Rourke picture.
Oh, you do have my screen, though.
I do have that screen. Sorry, I just got a text.
You did?
I got a text.
Was it from Barack Obama?
It was from Kate Fox.
Oh, it is?
And we are on. She'll
Excellent.
be here on Friday. So I'm sorry if I got a little distracted.
Let's just, you know what? Let's not get Let's not do Beto O'Rourke then.
I can put Beta up.
No, let's move to something else. Since on Friday, we are going to interview the now former Chief Justice of the Wyoming Supreme Court, Kate Fox. And I'm assuming that it is Friday at 9 a.m. Going to be live on the program, so you definitely don't want to miss that one. What we're going to talk about, well, we're going to talk about a couple of different things, but I'm chiefly interested in how we select judges. Because I don't like the current system. I don't know how we can do it better. Kate Fox happens to think it's a pretty good system. And so we're going to have her on the program to talk about that and then one other issue.
Yeah, I look forward to having her. And if anybody is really interested and wants to go back to Judiciary Committee in, I think it's the first session, the first morning of Judiciary back in May, I think it was, they had Kate on, and she goes through some of what we'll go through here. So we want to talk about, how the judges are selected and that thing. And then there's also, and it's on the chalkboard behind you, so I can mention it. There is a lot of talk about judges being threatened, and I believe we'll get some examples of that from Kate and have a discussion about that. So I'm very much looking forward to it.
I am so stoked about this. In fact, I was, talking about it with family over the weekend, and I think what's so important about this interview is that you don't hear from members of the judiciary very often. Judges typically don't give interviews, and I think that that's for a good reason.
Yeah, and she pointed that out. There are some parameters, some things that we can't necessarily talk about, cases that she's still involved with that are winding up. But she has been saying for a long time, yeah, we very seldom hear from judges, and we should. People need to understand more. We need to be a little bit more open. And so I think that's one of the reasons why she was amenable to coming on and talking with us. And I'm glad she is. I enjoy talking to her.
Well, and I'm very excited about Friday's episode, or Friday's live program. So we're going to do it at 9 a.m. and it's going to be live on Cowboy State Politics, and you definitely don't want to miss it. So as it relates to that, and her text came in at a perfect time because I've got this piece from Wyopile. There was a
save me from having to put up Beto O'Rourke's picture.
Yeah, well, you were avoiding that anyway, and frankly, I didn't want to do it anyway. But I didn't torture anybody with The View today, so I figured maybe we'll substitute Beto O'Rourke in there. But there's a piece in Wyopile, and you know what? This is going to take too long, so let's go ahead and take our last break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about threats to judges, lawyers, and kind of preview our interview with the former Chief Justice of the Wyoming Supreme Court, Kate Fox. Back in a minute. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics. I'm David Iverson, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God Almighty himself. Welcome back to the program, my friends. If you missed the big announcement before our last break, former Chief Justice of the Wyoming Supreme Court, Kate Fox, will be live on Cowboy State Politics on Friday at 9 a.m., an interview that I'm looking forward to, my friends. I think it's a big one, and I think we're going to learn a lot. And we've got some questions for the Chief Justice also. But there's a piece in Wildpile, and it's entitled "Judges, Lawyers Describe Perils of Attacking Judiciary at Grand Teton National Park Gathering." So we've been hearing for a long time that there have been threat to judges, and certainly there have been some that are absolutely real. There was the guy that tried to assassinate Justice Kavanaugh. There have been other threats. There was Chuck U. Schumer on the steps of the Wyoming Supreme Court telling Gorsuch that he was going to, how did he put it? Reap the whirlwind. Now, I don't know exactly what that means, but it's not good.
It means they're the storm.
They are. Oh, yes, the sign we saw at the Sheridan protest. We're the storm, or the coming storm. Which, by the way, that's a common phrase for the left. There was a book put out by a group called the Invisible Committee. I've got a copy of it at home, but it's entitled "The Coming Insurrection." And no, it wasn't put out by somebody on the right. But this is a common theme from the Democrats, that if they don't get what they want, they resort to violence. And we have seen a number of threats to members of the judiciary, and I think that that none of them are good. Okay, we shouldn't be threatening judges, or we shouldn't be threatening anybody for that matter. But it seems in the legal profession that there's been an increase. So here's what Wildpile has to say about it. Quote, The rule of law is in jeopardy, said Robert Henry, a former chief judge of the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, during a 4-day conference at Jackson Lake Lodge. Henry joined a chorus of judges and lawyers describing the peril of undermining the legal system that underpins a functioning society. When people take out mortgages or save money for college, for example, they're banking on those long-term decisions being legally enforceable, said Richard Dean, president of the American College of Trial Lawyers. The comments come at a time when the judiciary has increasingly come under fire by President Donald Trump and his. Okay, so obviously this is written by Wildpile, so they're going to bash on President Trump. Anyway, and his allies who have blamed judges for thwarting his policies. Now, let's just be completely honest about this. The Supreme Court just recently ruled that a district judge cannot issue a nationwide injunction. And the left has relied on judges for the last several years, but it's really ramped up in the last 6 months. That no matter what the policy is, there's a lawsuit that's filed, and you get a district judge to issue an injunction. And this same sort of thing has also been happening in Wyoming, in a different way. We have Melissa Owens in Jackson, who made up law out of whole cloth in her ruling about the abortion lawsuit. That's probably one of the ones that we can't talk to Kate Fox about because she was still on the bench when that one came to the court. But absolutely just made up law, said that abortion is health care. Nowhere does that exist in Wyoming statute, and she just made it up. Or you have judges just saying that a lawsuit doesn't have standing. I don't know how many lawsuits have been thrown out that I guess ostensibly looked to be pretty legitimate. There was the parents in Rock Springs who found out the school system was trying to transition their kid. Apparently, they don't have standing. And then there was Grace Smith, who was arrested at a Laramie High School for not wearing a mask. They took her to jail. Apparently, she doesn't have standing either. And it's a ridiculous argument, too. That's like saying that if you got, I don't know, robbed in Wyoming, you're on vacation or something, and you get robbed in, Rock Springs, which is a likely place for something like that to happen.
Maybe a drunk county commissioner ran into you.
Yeah, maybe a drunk county commissioner ran into you, and you, I'm sure that one's coming too. And then you leave the state and you sue, and then the state judge says that you don't have standing because you're not in the state anymore. I mean, that is the ridiculous level that we're at right now. And so it's a similar thing that we're seeing in Wyoming to nationwide injunctions. So judges just on their own saying the entire nation has to follow my order. And in many cases, some of them haven't even had any basis in law. It's just because they disagree with Donald Trump, and so they're going to rule on it. So that's the perspective that Wildpile is coming from. In response to those attacks on the courts, the lawyers and judges on Friday's panel emphasized that defending the rule of law, an independent judiciary, and access to justice is a nonpartisan issue. So, what is the rule of law? Henry asked. A former Oklahoma legislator and attorney general, he summed up how scholars answer that question. The law must be spelled out so people know it in advance. The law also must be public, clear, stable, and certain, though it can change over time. Quote, it must be applied equally, he said. The government must follow the law, and it requires an impartial, independent magistrate. Now, his next comment, this one is where I start to take exception to, and again, this is Wildpile, so it's not exactly fair and balanced, but here's what he said. This is a fight, Henry said, noting that he's joined efforts to defend attorneys under attack via amicus briefs. That follows a career of asking attorneys to defend judges. So to characterize this, and you all know what I believe.
2 plus 2 is 4, not 5 if you want it to be 5. And this is not to be discriminatory. This is to stand up for language. Words mean things.
Words mean things. So this is a conference that's set up to talk about attacks on judges and attorneys and the legal profession in general. And yet a former judge from Oklahoma says this is a fight. Okay, so instead of characterizing the discussion in terms of what we ought not do, he sets it up in terms of it already being a fight. He goes on. Judges have famously neither sword nor purse, but only judgment, Henry said. Hamilton said that. He's a figure on Broadway, he joked, lightening the mood in the room. But threats to judges are deadly serious. Fellow panelist and former Wyoming Governor Mike Sullivan said, holding up a photo of a wanted poster of judges displayed outside the office of U.S. Representative Andy Ogles, a Tennessee Republican. The Federal Bar Association wrote a letter to his office protesting this and expressing the concern that everyone in this country should have about the safety and independence of judges and what this kind of conduct does to the rule of law. So there's a couple of levels, a couple layers to this that we have to talk about. First of all, it's the language. There are crazy people in the world that will do crazy things. There have been attacks on judges in Wyoming, and I'm hoping we can get Justice Fox to talk about a couple of those because she's involved in one of them. And so this is not one of those that Wyoming is immune. But just think about the words that are used. This is a fight. The left is, and okay, Republicans are not immune in this. We have crazy people on our side too. I think that we have to agree that that's the truth. But it's pretty easy to get a crazy person amped up and get them to do something that they wouldn't normally do. And we are living in a time where, let's just be honest, President Trump was almost killed at a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. That's kind of where we are. And as a culture, we kind of thought that, maybe we had left that part of politics back in the 1960s with RFK and JFK and Martin Luther King Jr. But I don't think that it ever goes away. And we have to be very careful about the language that we use. So you have this conference in Grand Teton Park or whatever they're calling it, talking about threats towards judges, and they characterize it in terms of a fight. But let's continue with the piece. As Sullivan sees it, and that's former Governor Mike Sullivan, a Democrat. I don't think he was that great of a governor either, by the way. The administration and Congress are ignoring the rule of law, and the U.S. Supreme Court is looking the other way. Quote, it is the citizens that are going to have to do something if it's going to be corrected, Sullivan said. If we can't avoid the cliff, we're walking towards. So wait a minute. So a former governor is saying that an entire group of people is not following the law and that Congress isn't following the law. Well, I don't know that I don't see how that is entirely possible because we have the Supreme Court, who is they are the highest court in the land. So I don't really see how Governor Sullivan's comments really make any sense at all. I think that we are following the law, but when you have Democrats like Sullivan claiming at a conference that is ostensibly to talk about threats to judges, saying that there's one half of our government, or the Congress and the presidency, aren't following the law. What does that say about the Democrats' intentions? I would argue that it's not really helping the situation. And when we know that we have crazy people in the world that act out with violence because of political motives, I don't see that this is helpful at all. And again, I mean, it's one of the reasons why we wanted to talk to Justice Fox.
How many talking heads on the left have come out and what's her name that said, don't leave them alone in the restaurants. You got to harass them.
Oh yeah, that was Maxine Waters.
Yeah, Maxine. Oh, gotta love Maxine. So they do all of this sort of thing, but when Sarah Palin put up a picture of a target and said we're targeting certain districts, that was
a huge
beyond the
controversy.
pale. Yeah. It's just more and more examples of the double standards, and I think of projection. We talked earlier about how the left always seems to be the ones that resort immediately to violence.
Well, they absolutely do. And, again, and just listen to the headline one more time, if I can get to it in my papers here. So the headline says, judges' lawyers describe perils of attacking judiciary. All right, so they're talking about the perils. And then we have the former governor of Wyoming saying that the administration and Congress aren't following the law. Listen to this next part. Retired Wyoming Supreme Court Justice Mike Golden said he and others in Wyoming's legal profession are publicly defending the rule of law. Golden and Sullivan were among the 100 members of Wyoming's legal community who called on the state's congressional delegation to condemn attacks on the judiciary. Quote, obviously, that's the best thing we can do is speak out at every opportunity in our local communities. But he expressed frustration with Wyoming's congressional delegation for describing Wyoming jurists as biased and liberal. Well, we have to be honest about our politics. And just because a branch of government is criticized, that's different than attacking. So, and if you're on the left, sometimes those two words get used synonymously. And so if you're offering criticism, that somehow you're attacking the people that sit on the bench. That's not true at all. We live in a republic, and we have to be able to criticize our government. I mean, it is absolutely, we absolutely have a right to ask for a redress of our grievances, whether that's from the bench or whether that's from Congress or whether that's from the president. Let's be honest, there have been some really horrible decisions in America's past. Plessy versus Ferguson, for example. I mean, there have been a lot of Supreme Court cases that were just absolutely wrong. I might include Roe v. Wade. Nowhere in the Wyoming Constitution is abortion even mentioned, even alluded to. And yet the Roe v. Wade decision tried to create it out somehow out of the 14th Amendment. Well, that's not a correct decision. We have to judge, our laws for what they are. We don't get to make them up. And so absolutely, citizens have every right, and I would argue a responsibility, to criticize their government. And the justice system is a part of the government. And when you have a judge that's acting biased, and let me give you a Wyoming example, Mr. Mike Golden, Melissa Owens. If she was judging that case based on the law and not what she wanted, she would have come to a very different decision. But instead, she just says abortion is health care, which that definition does not appear in Wyoming law. In fact, the reverse is actually true. We have a law, like if you're in an accident and a pregnant woman dies, maybe it's a drunk driving accident, you're charged with 2 crimes, not 1. 2 lives you killed, not 1. And so Wyoming law already says that the baby, an unborn baby, is a living human being. And so how can Melissa Owens just make up that ruling out of whole cloth? Well, she's being biased. And criticizing her is not a form of an attack. It's not a form of violence. It is political criticism. And justifiable criticism, I would argue. So let's hear. The article continues. Senator John Barrasso isn't a lawyer, he noted, and this is that Mike Golden character. But Representative Harriet Hageman and Cynthia Lummis are both attorneys required by their profession to take an oath to defend and uphold the state and U.S. constitutions. Golden himself has taken the oath as a lawyer, military officer, and a judge. Quote, I think in my own life I've taken that oath every damn day, Golden said. It's hard for me not to get angry, and I'm sure it is for all of you. But he added, the anger has to be tempered and directed to the right audience, not congressional representatives who respond only with form letters. All we can do is speak truth to power and do it responsibly, Golden said. I'll continue to do that as long as I am able. So I ask, is the former justice acting responsibly in characterizing criticism of the judiciary as an attack? An attack, and you have to understand the connotations of words. Words mean things, my friends, and different words have different connotations to it. And if you use the word attack or fight, or those conjure up images in a person's mind of violence. And if you look at a lot of the political violence, most of the political violence that's happened in the last 10 years, who has perpetrated it? Okay, so the shooting of Steve Scalise at the baseball park, that was a Bernie Sanders supporter. The guy who tried to kill President Trump, clearly not a Republican. The BLM riots, you think most of those people were Republicans? No. The George Floyd riots, you think that those were conservatives that were running around? No. The truth is that most of the political violence comes from the radical left in this country. And it's very clear, at least from the way that Wildpile wrote this up, that many of the people at this conference absolutely are on the left. And again, when you're characterizing criticism as an attack, I mean, I think that pretty much says everything you need to. Here's how it ends up. Quote, former U.S. District Chief Court Judge William Downs of Wyoming echoed Golden's call to speak out to civic groups and churches and to stand up for judges. Quote, it is truly a coward who attacks a judge, Downs said, because a judge has to stay in his or her chambers and be silent. Cases come to judges, they don't seek them out, he noted. Downs also pointed to Judge Esther Salas, who pursued litigation to enhance security for judges nationwide after a gunman killed her only child and wounded her husband in a 2020 attack aimed at her. That woman needs to be honored. We need to defend her, Downs said. We need to defend all those who wear a robe. I couldn't disagree. I couldn't agree more. We do need to protect our judges and elected officials. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how we go about doing it. But we should not in any way condone political violence. I mean, we can have pretty strong debates. I mean, Agent 29 and I have had some throwdowns, not very many of them, because we pretty much agree on a lot of stuff. But we've had some things that we disagree on. I've had a lot of disagreements with Trotsky at the cow pie. But those are political disagreements. Those are disagreements that we use words in. And we have to be very careful and cognizant that we do have crazy people in the world. And having a whole conference when you describe criticism as an attack, I mean, that absolutely does the opposite of what they said they were going to do. And by that, I mean, have a conference about attacks on judges when they themselves characterize criticism as an attack. I mean, it's absolutely contradictory.
I just see several aspects in that. Yeah, judges are threatened, and you mentioned it. So are all the rest of us electeds.
Yeah,
get threats from time to time. Many of them.
I've had them.
Yeah, many of them not credible. Some are. One of my complaints is the leniency of these judges, where people who would not be harmful if they were locked up, as I feel they should have been, are just released with a slap on the wrist. And from that, they get this great disdain for the law. Nothing's going to happen anyway. It's not a big deal. I've already got 4 DUIs.
Right.
Maybe I'll just run for county commissioner.
Exactly right. Well, I think that you bring up a valid point that I can't tell you how many times I've opened up the newspaper and seen, well, this person, arrested for possession with intent to distribute methamphetamine. And the punishment is probation, a slap on the wrist. I know a gal I mentioned this several times on the program in the past, but I think it's a perfect example. I know a gal in Buffalo, Wyoming that's been charged and convicted 3 times of possession with intent to distribute methamphetamine. Count them, 1, 2, 3. And she has spent a grand total of 30 days in jail for all 3 of those felonies. And, I know that we don't have a 3 strikes and you're outlaw here, but really? Probation for all of that? And that's just one case. There's a lot of them in Sheridan that, guy gets popped for, possession of drugs or, another violent crime, robbery, or, you can probably fill in the blank. And the punishment is very lenient. It's either a couple days in jail. Another one. Oh, man. This was in my newspaper that I found in Basin, Wyoming, that the chief of police in Manderson helped his girlfriend get out of a drug charge, or at least attempted to, and he was given 9 days in jail. 9 days in jail. And you are a sworn officer of the law, and you break the law in an attempt to let another criminal get away with the law, and you get 9 days in jail. And we wonder why there isn't the respect for the law that some of these folks in Jackson were complaining about. I mean, the law has to be applied fairly and equally, and when it's not, there's no reason. If the law only applies to one group of people, there's no reason to assume that anybody else will follow it. And that's one of the tenets of our republic is the law applies to everyone. And you can go all the way back to the Boston Massacre when John Adams defended the British and they were acquitted. The law applied to them, even though we were about to, fight a revolution against them. It still applied.
Yeah, there was a judiciary meeting a couple of years back that I testified at, and I believe this was the issue that came up, and the judiciary was saying we need to have a couple of more laws. And my response, my answer back to them was, well, maybe when you begin enforcing the laws we've already written, we might consider some others. But that is just a constant problem, is we have so many laws out there. I don't know, I've read several articles that say you can't live a day without committing at least one felony, or
I think it's 7 felonies
yeah,
a day,
things like that. And we've gotten to the point where there are so many laws that they just really don't mean anything anymore. And rather than begin to apply the laws, we mentioned it earlier when we were talking about immigration, rather than apply the laws that already exist or correct them, we just pile more on top of it. And, that's the knee-jerk answer to everything, is there ought to be a law. And quite frankly, there are a lot of things that government can never fix.
Well, I agree with that. We're talking about problems that exist in our culture that, how many times in the last 2 weeks have we seen pictures on the news of people throwing rocks and attacking ICE officers? Or, not just ICE officers, but police officers in general, who are just, like, their job is to arrest criminals. That's their job. The whole thing, right? So they investigate a crime. They think they've got the perp, slap the bracelets on them, haul them before a judge. That's their job. And the response of many on the left is to just attack them, to throw rocks, what about the shooting in Texas where, 10 or 11 people literally we talked about it on the program, opened fire on an ICE officer. We have to have respect for the law, and that goes for everybody, not just Republicans, not just Democrats, but everybody. And maybe that this is definitely a topic that I think that we ought to talk about with Justice Fox, and say, all right, so respect for the law. What do you think about the equal enforcement of our laws across the board? Do you think that's actually happening, or there are so many questions I want to ask her. By the way, did you tell her that we've got 30 minutes, or do we have a time limit? Because my chalkboard's going to be full.
She's prepared for 30 minutes, but I think she would be willing to stay longer.
Awesome. Okay. So anyway, we've got about 10 minutes left in the show, and I want to end it with this, and just kind of some some perspective on where we were and where we are now. And the Post Millennial has an article out this morning, and I think that we've talked about this before, but there's a shocking report that the Biden administration's hotline for migrant children complaining about their sponsors left 65,000 calls unanswered. 65,000 calls from immigrant children who were complaining about their sponsor. And let me just read a couple of the opening paragraphs, and then I've got a video from a congressional hearing where this actually comes out. And I quote, during a hearing held this week by the House Committee on Homeland Security, lawmakers were told that a hotline utilized by the Biden administration to report safety concerns regarding unaccompanied migrant children failed to respond to 65,000 calls between August 2023 and January of 2025. The hearing focused on the role of non-governmental organizations in what Republican lawmakers described as the border crisis under the Biden administration. One of the key witnesses was Allie Hopper, founder and president of Guard Against Trafficking. Hopper testified that both federal agencies and NGOs have been, quote, hijacked by criminal networks and operate behind the, quote, scale and mismanagement of the immigration system. Late last year, reports circulated that hundreds of thousands of migrant children sent to live with adult sponsors have been lost under the Biden administration due to ICE being unable to monitor all the children in its system effectively. The allegations stemmed from a Department of Homeland Security report, which found that 32,000 unaccompanied minors failed to appear for court dates between 2019 and 2023, and 291,000 migrant children handed over to the Department of Health and Human Services did not receive a court notice at all. So in this court hearing, and I think the video is titled 65,000 Children, here's what happened. Go ahead and play it.
This is what the American people voted for because they saw 4 years of the carnage that these open border policies plagued on the United States. And we're talking about the NGOs that they used as middlemen to carry out their operations, like the Catholic charities they used to facilitate, normalize, and accelerate illegal immigration into this country. Ms. Hopper, you've worked closely with trafficking victims and survivors. I'd like to explore the role that the NGOs have played in enabling the trafficking and exploitation of unaccompanied alien children. Under the last administration, what safeguards were put in place to protect vulnerable unaccompanied children?
I previously discussed the post-placement welfare checks, which consisted of 2 phone calls. Again, if the sponsor didn't answer, the case was no longer followed up on. But there was also a notice of concern hotline where people could report concerns about the unaccompanied child's safety. But what this administration found was from August 2023 to January of 2025, 65,000 calls went unanswered. Those calls spanned from, complaints about stale bread all the way to being abused, to one case where a child's call was reporting that grown men were coming into his room at night and they were touching him. Nothing happened with that call. That call went unanswered until this administration took office, went through those 65,000 calls, made follow-up.
Okay, so 65,000 calls were made, and they weren't even followed up on. And one of the more shocking parts of that video was where she says that the 2 follow-up calls, if the sponsor didn't answer, well, then they just didn't follow up on it. So wait a minute. You have a sponsor that's not doing their job, and you're not responding to it. Just absolutely shocking. Hey, Ken, I just looked up at the TV in the studio, and Trump is talking about the Russia hoax that we talked about in the beginning of the program.
From crooked Hillary Clinton. Crooked is a $3 bill. Hillary Clinton and her group, the Democrats, spent $12 million to Christopher Steele to write up a report that was a total fake report. Took 2 years to figure that out, but it came out that it was a total fake report. It was made up fiction, and they used that. The one thing they weren't able to do was to, and probably the only thing I respect about the press in years is the press refused to write it before the election. They refused to put it in. The Steele report was a disaster. all lies, all fabrication, all admitted, an admitted fraud. She paid $12 million, and the Democrats, for that report to a wise guy named Christopher Steele. He wrote a phony report, and they wanted to get that report in before the election. And I'll tell you what, I talk about all the time, the fake news, how bad it is. But in this case, they wouldn't do it. They saw it, they read it, and they said, we don't believe it. And it was only after, substantially, like a month and a half after the election, that it got printed, and it was a big wisp. It was just like a bang of nothing, because the election had ended. If that report had gotten published by the New York Times or somebody, and I respect the Times for maybe only this, because they're crooked as you can be. They're a terrible paper, a crooked, corrupt paper. But for this one moment, they said, this is bullshit. We can't.
Whoa! Did you hear that one? So Trump was talking about the report from the DNI Gabbard that came out. I think this is a big shocker, and I hope that it ends up going somewhere. Though, you know, I maybe this is just my own cynicism, but I don't think that it's really going to. I hope that it does. I hope some people get held accountable, because like we said earlier in the program, if people aren't held accountable, then the law doesn't mean anything. Well, we've pretty much burned up another busy broadcast program. Make sure that you stay tuned to Cowboy State Politics Live every Tuesday through Friday between 8 and 10 a.m. And don't forget about the podcast. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. We'll see you tomorrow, my friends.